Hey, what's going on, guys? Appreciate you stopping by. I'm out running a few errands. Thought I would send off a video and share a few things that are on my mind right now. I, I've mentioned it before that I have a feeling that there's a sense of urgency to get better situated, better prepared, to stock up on things that might be needed if there's some type of event that causes an interruption to the ability to get supplies, to get services. And I know I'm not alone. I hear it in the comments. There's people that I talk to, people that I know, and they are feeling it as well. It's not about worrying. It shouldn't be about worrying. It's not about panic. It's about common sense preparation, because the reality is, and I say this, things might just work out just fine. Everything might be okay. And I've also said that, when you look at everything that's going on and you look at the data and the evidence, I'm thinking maybe not. You know, that I think there's a good chance things are not going to be okay. And that, those of us that believe that, there's something that awaits us around the corner, around the bend. We could see some storm clouds building off in the distance, and we don't know how bad it's going to be, but the threat is there that, we need to be ready. I think way back before there was, television and radio, and there were primitive means to forecasting the weather. Imagine those folks that were in Florida and they get slammed by a category 3 or 4 hurricane. And they had no idea, not a whole lot of idea, that it was coming. Or, again, the people that lived someplace where there's a threat of a severe winter storm, and they didn't have the opportunity that we have today to get a few days notice. You had to be prepared. You had to be ready to take shelter and, and be prepared. So, there's another saying: the ground doesn't have to collapse beneath you before you notice that it's starting to move. Another analogy: it wasn't raining when Noah built the ark. He did it ahead of time. So, there isn't one single event that has me concerned. It's the number of things when you look at the world today that's happening at the same time. We have an unpredictable situation in the Middle East that continues to change from one day to the next. You hear positive things that give us hope. It also gives the stock market and those that control the price of petroleum hope. And then it falls apart. So who knows what's going to happen there? We keep hearing about cyber attacks and disruptions involving water systems, telecommunications, computer networks, and other infrastructure. I just recently heard there was an airline that was temporarily disrupted because of some type of technical glitch. Now, they didn't call it a cyber attack, but it makes you wonder. It certainly makes you wonder. There's food recalls and contamination. We've had people dying from this lettuce situation. I mean, there's economic uncertainty that is growing every day. Rising costs, food and everything else is going up in price. supply chains that, we thought were dependable and now not so much. The quality of things that we purchase, including food, seems to be decreasing. Many of the vegetables and the meat that we buy that we're not growing and harvesting ourselves falls into question. What is it grown with? Chemicals? Is it genetically modified? What impact is that going to have in the future? I mean, any one of these things by itself might not mean much. But when you start putting them all together, all on the same board as puzzle pieces, it starts to develop a picture that doesn't look too good. And I'm going to throw out a couple other ones I haven't mentioned. The societal decaying and degrading that is happening, that just the moral values that we have today is getting absolutely disgusting. I've talked before about how I really do not want to get into the political sphere on this channel. I really want to focus on preparedness and then living a life that you can be happy with and more self-reliant, which leans towards homesteading and a modern exodus. But you look again off in the political horizon and you see a growing trend towards socialism and communism that is not good. It's just not good. The impact that can have on our individual lives is significant. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But, you look at some of the people that are living in New York City and some of the changes that are happening. It's, some people are happy about it. But if you have a certain belief system and freedom, it's not something to celebrate. So that's all I'm going to say about that for right now. So, maybe that's the feeling that people are having right now. We can't necessarily identify what's coming because there's just not one single thing. It could be a mass cyber attack. It could be EMP. It could be, the war that's in the Middle East expanding. It could be, terrorist sleeper cells in the United States that take some kind of action, whether it's on a small scale or a large scale. It could be, economic problems, continued inflation, and our wages staying stagnant. It could be, a major storm. They're talking about this El Nino that's happening right now, and is going to continue. And there's going to be places, possibly where I'm at, that could see, massive amounts of snow. And, we'll have to see what happens. It could be prolonged power outages. We continue to see our grid challenged beyond what it was built for. That's something that's discussed quite a bit. It could be a supply chain disruption that's not even related to the Strait of Hormuz. It could be something else that causes that. Or maybe it's something that none of us are even talking about. We're not even talking about it today. The uncertainty of the world today and life, I think, plays a big role into this feeling of, a storm that's approaching. And that's why I feel a sense of urgency. It's not panic. I mentioned that before. It's not panic. It's urgency. Because if we're wrong and we stock up on some extra food, some water, some emergency cash, we have some backup power and some useful skills, well, good. That's great. that's a benefit. It's not going to be a negative if nothing happens and, everything turns out to be just fine. But if that feeling that we have at times, and I've been having really for probably a year straight, that we need to prepare because this is all going to come to a head at some point. Something is going to happen. And I've got my thoughts into what is more likely than not. And, maybe I'll talk about that in another video. But if we're right and we enter a more unstable and unpredictable period of time, and we have some events occur that we have to rely on those preps, well, it's going to turn out that that's extremely valuable, not just to us, but to friends and family that we may help at the same time. So, I sometimes look at all of these things that are happening, and I read through the comment section. You can see that a lot of people, they have different concerns. Some are political in nature, some are economic, some are societal or social. But it's almost like they're all starting to find each other, and they are intertwined and intermingled. So the bottom line is, there are people out there that live in ignorant bliss, and they do nothing to prepare. And I'll admit that I'm jealous of them at times. I wish that I didn't pay attention so much, and I didn't have these concerns. And it's not at an unhealthy level. I truly believe it's common sense. But if you're somebody that maybe found this channel and you're like, yeah, I feel the need to get better prepared. I think I should take some steps because, this world's getting crazy. Jake, this world is just nuts, and I just don't know what's going to happen next. Cats and dogs are going to start getting along together. What is going on? Then, what I would suggest, and just real quick, is start with food. Build up a few weeks of food that you already eat, along with, some hygiene products, pet supplies. Don't forget Fido, and other necessities. And, don't wait until something happens and suddenly everybody is running to the store. That would be the worst time to decide, what, I'm going to take action. Water, I mentioned food, water is right there. You could store some water. Water's not the easiest thing to store unless you have a lot of space. But you could store some extra water, a few cases of water, gallons, and have a water filter that if the tap stops working, you can get water, whether it's from a puddle, a pond, or a lake, a stream. If you've got prescriptions and medications that you take, look into ways, do some research. I should do a video on this as well, because it's something that I've done. And look into ways that you can stock up on those medications that you really need. If it's, if it's just ibuprofen or Tylenol or Benadryl or something like that, you can buy that over the counter and stock up on that pretty easy. Fuel is something we've talked a lot about, but stocking up, put a few cans of gasoline or diesel back is common sense. You might use it for your lawnmowers, a tractor, a log splitter, but you can use it for your vehicle as well and rotate it. If you've got a generator, look on if you need one. Of course, if you've got the funds, you can go out and buy one brand new, or look for a used one on Facebook Marketplace or something like that, and fuel for that. And again, remember to rotate. and start that generator up. I just did that last weekend. I started the generator up. We've got multiples. I started one of them up, let it run for a while, just make sure it's in good working order. Have a emergency radio. It could be just an AM FM with weather. Make sure you have batteries and run that periodically. Don't let the batteries go bad. There's a lot of them that come and they have rechargeable batteries. And make sure, think about home security. Do you have defensive tools that you can defend yourself and your loved ones and your property? Because unfortunately, this world continues to become a more dangerous place. And it's important. Emergency cash, have a emergency cash on reserve as much as you can do. There are people out there that are going to say, have 6 months on hand. For most people, that is unrealistic. Regardless of what they shoulda, woulda, coulda done in the past, we are where we are at now. And yes, maybe if we did things different in the past, we could have 6 months or a year on hand. But, if it didn't happen, then, put back as much as you can. It might be $500, $1,000, $3,000. Do some simple things like, write down all the phone numbers and addresses and names of your friends and relatives. Because so often everything's right in the phone. And if something happens to your phone, you have no way of contacting anybody. Some people don't even know the phone number of their spouse. So anyways, I blabbed long enough. Let me go ahead and send this off. I appreciate you guys stopping by. Comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Are you feeling a sense of urgency? If so, are you doing anything about it? Is there a specific reason why you're feeling that sense of urgency? And, I just hope nobody out there is really worrying. That's not good. Just have a concern. If you're worrying, make a plan. Once you have a plan, you should turn that worry into a concern because you have a plan and you know what you're going to do if something were to happen. So, all right, guys, I appreciate you stopping by. You guys stay safe. Take care. We'll see you next time.
So I ran from the cities and the noise and lies, found a piece of ground under open skies, hands in the dirt, sweat on my shirt, learning what living's really worth. While crooked men shake hands in rooms, selling souls to corporate suits. Society's sick, but I found the cure. A back road life, honest and pure. They can keep their throne and their golden news. This life out here's my modern exodus. I traded screens for a sunrise, callous palms, blisters, pride, planted seeds where hope was.